Good evening, everyone, and welcome to New York Metro Weather's Hurricane Irene Severe Weather Briefing, the evening of August 26, 2011. Hurricane Irene has weakened. It is a 100-mile-an-hour hurricane just southeast of the Carolinas at this time. This advisory from 5 p.m. The movement is north at 14 miles an hour, and the hurricane is still expected to take a track just barely scraping the outer banks of the Carolinas, and then just offshore of the Delaware and Maryland beaches, and up just barely off the New Jersey coast and into western or central Long Island. We'll take a look at the radar shots, which we're getting really good looks at for the first time today. And you can see the hurricane churning its way northward up the east coast, just getting into South Carolina and the bands onto the coastline, back towards Charleston and up into North Carolina now. The storm expected to track northward, as mentioned, scraping the outer banks. You can see that movement pretty well on radar, but an impressive amount of rain, although the center of the storm remains just outside of the radar picture. The visible satellite imagery is very impressive, and you can see this is a very, very large hurricane with tropical force winds extending very far away from the center of the storm, and the effects of the storm, the outer bands, way back to the west, and the outflow bands even back to the east into the central Atlantic Ocean. This is a very big storm, and you can see the impact that it's going to have just by looking at it on visible satellite imagery. As we mentioned, the storm was weakening and had been undergoing some changes, but the storm is expected to re-strengthen over the next few hours. It's not expected to be rapid strengthening, and it was noted especially by the National Hurricane Center, who mentioned that the storm is not expected to undergo rapid intensification, which is what some people were mistaking their forecast for. The storm is just expected to become slightly more organized as it continues its trek on to the north. This is another good look of the visible satellite imagery and the size of the storm. If you were to look back at the United States and some of the sizes of the states, you really start to get an appreciation for how big this storm really is. This is a microwave imagery into the storm, the convection surrounding it, and the structure of the system. And you can see here was the eye wall, this was the outer eye wall, and you can see that the southwest side of the eye has collapsed, and the system has weakened as a result of that. But over the last, I don't know, maybe half hour to an hour, the system is developing some cooler cloud tops, and you can see that the system is trying to get itself slightly more organized. The recon data still coming in as we speak. They've found a pressure near the center of the storm slightly lower than they found just a few hours ago now. So the storm is strengthening a little bit at the very least. It was 953 millibars, then it's down to 950, and now the latest is 948. So the system is beginning to get itself a little bit more organized, but it's not expected to strengthen rapidly over the next 12 hours. There might be a slight uptick in the strength of the storm. The models continue to bring the storm up to the north and in a dangerous position for our area, so we don't want you to be fooled by the slight disorganization of the storm system at this time. This is the NAM-WRF model for 48 hours, which would be Sunday afternoon, and you can see a very, very strong area of low pressure just off the New Jersey coast. Tremendous amount of forcing and dynamic, heavy tropical rains over the area, and you can see the 500 millibar trough is very, very intense, as well as the 700 and 850 millibar lows. The 20 Celsius contour there in the 850 millibar low, indicative of a warm core system. Very common with tropical systems and hurricanes. This tropical storm, as we mentioned, producing a tremendous amount of rainfall, and these are the SREF ensembles. The bottom right image is the mean of all of these models, and you can see generally upwards of 6 inches of rain is expected in a corridor from the Carolinas through the Delaware and Maryland beaches up into New Jersey and New York City. Some of these members have in excess of 8 inches of rain. Good majority of them actually do. So it's important to remember now, this is a multifaceted threat, and the system can produce very, very heavy rain, strong winds, and storm surge. And speaking of storm surge, it's very, very important to look at where the storm surge can occur. This is the probability of a storm surge of greater than 2 feet. And you can see probabilities are high in the New York Harbor, the South Shore of Long Island, Connecticut South Shore, and along the New Jersey coast as well. So the storm surge, the rain, the flooding, these are the things you need to prepare for, and this is why areas are being evacuated along the shore, areas in New York that are below sea level. And you can only imagine these kind of effects being felt in an area below sea level near the ocean. So this is why your area is being evacuated. And you might say, why do we have a mandatory evacuation? Well, these are the reasons. Because the ground is already moist. The area has received several inches of rain in the last week or two. And then you put 8 to 10 inches of rain on top of a saturated ground, and do you have flood water? The areas will flood. And the winds acting in these areas that are moist ground, you will have trees falling easily, much more easily than they would with the dry ground. We've seen it before with just thunderstorms. We've seen moist ground and wind and trees falling with a nor'easter. And the other thing is, we've spoken several times, as we take a look here at the wind field of the system, we've spoken several times about how the best winds, as the system moves up north along the coast, will shift to the east side of the system. That is pretty natural. Angular momentum supports this. But back to the west side of the system, as the system begins to transition towards extratropical, you will get a just tremendous expansion of the wind field. So you will be feeling tropical storm force winds with gusts to hurricane force as far west as northeast New Jersey, which is why these hurricane warnings are in effect. And it's also really important to remember that these types of storm systems are very rare in our area. So although the storm may resemble a nor'easter, the effects are going to be different. This is a hurricane. This is a tropical system, which we do not get in this area very often, if at all. So please heed the warnings that are given to you by your local officials. The National Weather Service, hurricane warnings are in effect. Prepare adequately. And really, it's important to remember that these are preparations to help ensure your safety. You know, it doesn't mean that it's time to panic and time to freak out because your house is going to blow away. What it means is that it's time to react and be prepared to react if the worst does actually occur. And it's better safe than sorry, especially in an area where we live, which is so terribly prone to storm surge and flooding in events like this. So to highlight what's gone on since this afternoon, Irene has weakened slightly, but is expected to remain steady and maybe get a little bit more organized before it scrapes the Outer Banks. And then it's expected to pick up forward speed as it moves up the East Coast as a Category 1 hurricane just off the coast of New Jersey. And as it begins to affect our area, Saturday we'll see the potential for some heavy rain in the late morning and afternoon with the first bands of the hurricane. And then Saturday night into Sunday, the conditions really deteriorate with heavy rain, potential for some thunderstorms, very strong winds, tropical force winds with hurricane force gusts along the coast, and also the potential for storm surge. These storms pick up a lot of water, and they bring a storm surge with them into an area, our area, which is prone to storm surges. That's why areas like Long Beach Island have been evacuated, the Rockaways have been evacuated, and the low-lying Zone A areas of New York City are being evacuated for this very reason, because these areas are below sea level, and it's very, very important that we don't have people there that could be in danger as the storm makes its way up the East Coast. So, we will be with you guys on Facebook and Twitter. We'll be interacting with you. We will be here throughout the night. We'll post all the details of Hurricane Irene step by step. As we get them, we'll relay them to you. So stay with us, and we'll keep you guys updated. We'll have another briefing video likely just after midnight tonight.